Welcome to the newest episode of Toolkit. Today we're going to go over some maintenance tips and tricks for our riding lawn equipment. So quite a bit of stuff to go over today, so let's get started. Today we're going to be going over the maintenance of this X590, but this actually will trickle up into our lineup into the X700 series and down into our lineup, down into the X300, S200, and S100 lineup. So all of these are going to be pretty much the same maintenance tips and tricks, but obviously they'll change up just a little bit by the different models that we're looking at. So let's get into it. First, let's go ahead and get under the hood. So we'll start kind of from the front and go towards the back. All right, so under the hood, I want to first note that we have our maintenance intervals printed on the top of the hood here in the back, here underneath the engine compartment. They're also going to be, your maintenance intervals are also going to be in your owner's manual. Obviously, always a good idea, and we absolutely advise that please read your owner's manual before you use your equipment so you understand its specifications and needs. But long and short, there is another printed diagram of all of the service intervals, i.e. what I need to do at 50 hours, 100 hours, and so on. So oil and oil filter. When I was growing up, checking the oil before every single time I used a tractor was absolutely critical to my employment at the farm where I used to work. So this is ingrained in me. This should be ingrained in you. You never know what can happen to an engine if it loses oil and you run it without oil. That could do some catastrophic damage to it. John Deere makes it real easy. So easy, twist off knob. Almost every single one of my mowers and tractors is like this. So I've got a twist off knob and I've got a dipstick that's got, full and add lines to it. It needs to be in between those two to make sure it's running properly. Oftentimes when you buy a brand new piece of equipment, just remember that that oil is very, very clear. It will darken up over time, which is absolutely natural, but it's kind of sometimes hard to see on those dipsticks. John Deere does a decent job on these mowers of making that dipstick white, so actually the contrast is really good. Moving off to the side of the engine here, I've got my oil filter that's located right next to my dipstick. It's almost always located on the same side of the dipstick on the Kawasaki engines that we provide. It is actually on the other side of the engine when we look at the Briggs & Stratton engine. So just something to take note of. I have an oil drain tube on this side of the mower so I can drain that oil. It's really nice to have it out to the side so I'm not getting oil all over the frame of the machine. Of note, you probably need to kind of work around the mower deck, so propping your drip pan underneath of it above the mower deck so I'm not pouring oil all over the top of my deck is always a smart option. So oil filter and drain tube. So if I'm going to do my own oil changes, all that stuff is easily accessible. Of course, our service department will handle that for you if you need us to, but it is pretty simple to do on your own. One more thing to make sure that we note on the oil is that we need to use the prescribed oil for our machine. So what I mean by that is you need to use the appropriate weight for your location, your region. So that's going to obviously be in your manual, so you'll need to check that. One other thing is that actual dipstick is also your fill tube, so you can fill your oil when you take that out as well. Okay, let's jump into the engine. So the first thing that we can check on the engine is going to be our air filter. So our air filter is generally located on the front end of our machines on most of my models. On some of the X700 series, it's located in a little different spot, but generally easy to get to. And John Deere has kind of thought this through. They make it really easy to get into these fuel compartments. So again, these are just 2 half turns on a knob. I'm pulling off a cover, and then I've got easy access to this filter. And I can take it on and off with a thumb screw, and it even has a pre-filter on the outside of it. So making sure that pre-filter is cleaned up, making sure that the air filter is free of dust and debris is always a nice maintenance check. If I want to clean out the air filter, I always want to blow from the inside out. So my service team has actually lent me a tool that they use inside the shop. So if I'm using an air wand that I'm going to hook up to an air compressor, I can blow from the inside of that filter to the outside to get rid of that, to release some of that debris. I never want to push air into the filter because all that's going to do is that paper filter is going to push it right through. The high air pressure will push it through. It has the chance to get into the engine compartment from there. So obviously inside out. All right, up next in the lineup, we got the fuel filter. So it's kind of hard to see from that angle, I'm assuming, but right here, there is an inline fuel filter. I can easily check that. Again, the fuel filter is on the maintenance schedule, so if I need to replace that, obviously I'm gonna crimp off both sides of the tube and replace that inline fuel filter. Pretty critical on these smaller engines that fuel stays clear and clean. Because obviously the smaller engines are more susceptible to damage if the fuel isn't clear and clean. So that fuel filter is definitely crucial to our maintenance schedule. Moving along, we've got the battery located up top. Again, making sure that the battery terminals themselves are clear of debris, corrosion, corrosive stuff. Here at my shop, we spray everyone with an anti-corrosive agent on each one of the terminals, so that's going to extend the life of those terminals and then thus extending the life of that battery because it's not going to have that buildup corrosion. This particular machine has a V-twin engine in it, so that means a couple of things to me. So that means that I'm going to have 2 spark plugs. Spark plugs checked interval on this particular machine is about every 100 hours. You're actually supposed to change them at that interval. The spark plugs are located on each side of the engine, and I'll be able to take these spark plug wire caps off real quick, pop them off, and then using a spark plug wrench, I'll be able to take those out and replace them. And I can get all those parts at the parts department at Papé Machinery. All right, let's jump into the mower deck. So mower deck maintenance is really crucial. You're gonna wanna make sure that this belt is free of any rips, tears, any foreign objects that may be on the top. Sometimes when I'm driving through the field, I get a stick up on top of there. You just want to make sure that that's all cleared out because that could throw a belt right off. The next thing that we want to look at, and John Deere is really good about this, is allowing for maintenance underneath the spindles. So if you look onto the side of the spindles, there's going to be a grease zert underneath there in each one of the active blade spindles. Checking those, making sure that you're greasing probably, I always recommend about every 10 hours when I'm mowing, just because I want to throw a couple of pumps of grease in there and keep those spindles and those bearings freshly greased so that I can extend the life of this deck. Again, making sure that it's clean. After use is another big one. Making sure that the top is free of water is a pretty good idea. I use a leaf blower often on mine when I just want to blow off all the foreign objects and foreign materials on it. Not a huge proponent of actually putting more water on my deck, so I try not to wash it too darn much, just keeping it free of that liquids because obviously this is steel and steel will eventually rust if you get any exposure on there. So long and short, we do have a nice washout port for the underside of the deck. If you don't know, this will go on the end of a regular old garden hose, and I can put the garden hose on there, fire up the garden hose, jump on my machine, run the blades. I believe it says for about a minute, and that will clear out a lot of the foreign debris that's underneath of that deck. Let's talk about the hydraulic system in these lawn tractors. So most of these machines that I sell are hydrostatic transmissions. Hydrostatic transmissions use hydraulic oil throughout the system. So on this machine, it's going to have a reservoir out back. It's going to have an add line and a fill line. We just need to be in between those two lines. And we're going to check this when it's cold. That hydraulic fluid has a tendency to expand, so it's not a very accurate measurement after we're mowing. It'll generally hit over that full line. One other big thing to note is that, for example, on my X300s, S200s, and S100 models, most of them actually do not have that reservoir. They are a closed system, and I'm not adding or subtracting fluid out of that particular reservoir. But obviously you're going to check your owner's manual to make sure that that's completely accurate for you, and of course go by the recommended specs of the hydraulic fluid that's recommended in the book for your particular machine. Let's talk about tire pressure. So why is tire pressure important? Well, obviously, if you have uneven tire pressure on any one of these tires, that's going to affect the cut quality of your deck. Obviously, if I have less tire pressure in the right side than I do on the left side, that I'm going to have an uneven cut. So when I'm leveling the deck, actually in the manual, the first thing to check in there is tire pressure. So on this particular lawn tractor, we're going to want 14 pounds of tire pressure in the back and 10 pounds of tire pressure in the front. But obviously you need to refer to your manual because each vehicle is a little bit different. So I would go ahead, and this is one of those times where you're gonna need an external piece of equipment. I've got this dial gauge. It's a John Deere dial gauge that I got from my parts department in there, and I can go ahead and take off these caps and check those tire pressures. Pretty easy to do. Gauge is really easy to read. It will also, if you're dealing with low tire pressure on these, you're putting more drag and wear on your drivetrain, so you make sure that that tire pressure is good in there, and that will actually maximize the longevity of the machine as well. So this has been a pretty all-inclusive overview of the maintenance tips and tricks that we've got for you for our riding lawn equipment. John Deere offers a variety of products to make this a lot easier on you. One of the ones that I would like to point out is this home maintenance kit. It's going to have the oil filter, fuel filter, spark plugs, air filter. All those things that we talked about in this video are going to come in this one kit. Really nice, really easy to use. Oftentimes when I sell a brand new machine, I'll have a customer purchase one of these so they're ready for that first home maintenance. But of course, you're always welcome to come in and use our service department. Those guys are armed and ready to get your machine running tip-top, make it a lot easier for you. And additionally, we offer things like the heavy-duty grease gun that you see here. I mean, this is going to be crucial for tractor ownership, for lawn tractor ownership, if I'm going to grease those spindles. Again, the tools will help you maintain this machine. You don't necessarily have to have a John Deere grease gun, but a grease gun is pretty critical pieces of equipment in the equation to keep these things maintained. So I hope you like and subscribe this video. It would be great for us to continue to provide this kind of content with you. Additionally, if you have any questions or you saw something that I may have missed, comment in the section below. Let's help the people in the Papé community kind of get better at this maintenance and make sure that our machines are maintained to that tip-top level, and make sure that that John Deere is getting the appropriate attention it needs. So if you need anything else, come see us at Papé Machinery, and we'll see you next time. Hi, my name is Jason Hughes. I'm a territory manager out of Eugene, Oregon. I'm also a large property owner and own a lot of the equipment that you see featured in these videos. I hope you find this content helpful. If you have any questions, please comment below.